Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Neem Capsule Podcast here from Neem Foundation. We're really happy to be coming back today on this podcast series. Today we'll be talking about farmer-herders relationship and the role of government and civil societies in resolving conflicts. I have with me today two very special guests. They are the friend of the organization, so we're really happy to have them here again. Mr. Emeka Mba, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us here.
Yeah, Mr. Emeka is the Deputy Director for Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. And we also have Dr. Barrister Ukam Ngwu. Yes. He is a research fellow with Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. You're welcome, sir.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. I'm very sure for the sake of our new listeners, Mr. Emeka, a couple of people want to know what the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, what they do, and probably to provide some historical context on the farmer-herders relationship. We're going to be talking more on their corporate bodies, that the AFAN-MAGBAN relationship. So maybe you could just provide us with that information.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here because Neem Foundation has been one of the IPCR's strong partners in peace in Nigeria, and we don't take this relationship for granted by any means. The Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution is a PASTAL which was established in the year 2000 by the Obasanjo regime as a response to the myriads of conflicts that plagued Nigeria then. We are a policy, think, and do tank. So we work on four separate legs. We conduct research, we do policy analysis, we do dialogue on issues related to conflict and peace building, and we also provide training and capacity building through our National Peace Academy. We at IPCR, we work closely with state actors, including government officials and security forces, to promote the peaceful resolution of conflicts and to develop effective strategies for addressing security challenges. We also engage with international organizations such as the Neem and United Nations agencies, the UNHCR. We recently just completed our project on the coping strategy support for children in armed conflict, which has led to the signing of what we call the handover protocol. We are also very gender sensitive. We've been supporting UN Women for the WPS, Women, Peace and Security, which is an action created by the Resolution 1325 of the UN, which calls on women to be part of peace resolutions. Because we all know that when there's conflict, women and children are the ones that are the most targeted. Mm-hmm. So when we are calling people to come and see how we can resolve or manage these conflicts, then they should also be on the table since they are the most affected. So the WPS, which was a UN resolution that calls on state level, sub-state and communal level engagement of women in conflict resolution, we're also part of it. We also look at issues of climate change. Recently, we just completed an 18-state border community survey on the effect of climate change on livelihoods and human security, because it's also related to this farmer-herder conflict, which finds its root in the climate crisis. You know, one degree of variability has caused so much migration, has caused so much displacement, has caused so much to the food security because of the unpredictable nature of weather. Both the droughts and the floods are unpredictable. Yeah. So the farmers are losing crops. You can see what happened recently. One of our most important agrarian belts, that's the Benue Plateau and Nasarawa states, where the most of the rice cultivation and yam cultivation have been washed out with the floods.
Yes. We know, and I'm glad you spoke about reconciliation, and that is really, really key to the farmer-herders relationship. Dr. Ukam, just before we get into the discussion proper, I know he had mentioned on climate change, and that is something that is really dear to both IPCR and even Neem Foundation. And I'm sure that every farmer or herder or people who are interested in this topic would like to know exactly, because this is something that we only started hearing in the Nigerian context just around 4 or 5 years ago, really. And it's something that, when we talk about climate change, there were majorly Western problems, right? But we see that there are things that are currently affecting the country. Our farmers are unable to farm and even predict the farming cycles. And this in itself also affects the herders. Do you think, in just one word, do you think we've done enough as a nation with regards to our climate issue response? Do you think we've done enough?
Okay, thank you very much. Just like you've rightly said, before now, the issue of climate change was considered Western in nature. So we look at it as what has been happening in other climes. But however, we are facing the effects of climate change. And if you look at the Western world, they have been with this problem and they have gone far. So I think that we are responding to it now, because unlike what the situation was before now, where we knew nothing and did not consider it a problem. Now there is an approach. We have now come to the limelight that actually this is an issue confronting us. We need to address climate change, and it is in the front burner. So it's an ongoing thing. It is not conclusive on its own. So for me, if I have to give a verdict, I would say that the Nigerian government, as well as the civil society, are trying to in the aspect of sensitizing and mobilizing the people to addressing the issue of climate change. I
totally agree with you. And also there's also the local context spin, where we're also looking at things that our forefathers did back then, that we maybe considered is old school, and now we're bringing back planting of certain trees. Like, for instance, the name Neem actually comes from a very resilient plant. That's the dogoyaro. I think a lot of people don't know this, but Neem is actually the English name of dogoyaro. And as you know, dogoyaro can grow almost anywhere, even in the dry, arid regions. Right, so these are some of the methods by which we are regaining our land. I think Mr. Emeka wants to say something about it.
Yes, I agree 100% with what Dr. Ukam said. Nigerian government and other governments, because climate is unfortunately not just ours. If you pollute in the U.S., it affects Nigeria.
Yes.
If Nigeria pollutes here, it affects the U.S. So it's everybody. And that's why we have what we call the Conference of Parties. And at the last Conference of Parties, the emphasis was no more on just adaptation on one side and mitigation on the other side, but on climate justice for Africa. This year we've broken every single year. The records are broken for floods, for droughts, for heat waves, for crop failure, deforestation. But it's how we can adapt, like you said, using these improved seedlings, like the neem. The neem is, the neem is it's not only just it's probably the best cure for malaria.
Oh yes, it's medicinal.
It's medicinal. So it's something that God has just given us, and God has also now put it there for us to be able to get back our environment.
I'm really happy that we've set the tone for this conversation. So we've talked about many things, many issues and factors that affect from our climate to our environment to our planting cycles to our grazing pathways and the rest. Let's bring it home now to Nigeria, within the Nigerian context. Mr. Emeka, can you elaborate more on specific responsibilities and functions of the IPCR in addressing the ongoing farmer herders crisis in Nigeria?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. IPCR has been very busy, trying to do what a lot of people feel that can't be done. Because that's why a lot of scholars now don't talk about conflict resolution. They call it conflict management because it keeps on coming back. Even though you've taken care of it for 100 years, somebody that remembers or has a grudge will just start flaming the embers, using politics to flame the embers of ethnic and religious divide. But, the other part of it is what has happened with the clashes, which is the bloody conflict. We have to understand that the herdsmen in Nigeria are vilified. Why I say they're vilified? Because a lot of times where IPCR has gone to research or investigate or intervene in either Benue, Plateau, Zamfara, Sokoto, all these clashes, or even in the south, in the southwest, you also see that there's a lot of mix. You first of all ask who owns the cows, and you find out that maybe like over 80% are actually owned by other people apart from the Fulani herdsmen themselves. In fact, it's as if they're just herding for other people. And most of the time, they are herding for the local community, but the bigger men there, So there's a lot of misinformation going on, and this problem prior to 1965, where the northern governments had grazing reserves set out, they weren't there because there was enough arable land. The north had enough grazing and watering spots for the cattle that were there, and the farmers too didn't have the kind of population that they had now. So, but with the 1970, I'm just trying to put some context into it. With the 1978 Land Use Act, things changed. It changed by vesting all the lands in the hands of the governors. And some governors then did what they deemed fit to do with the best of their knowledge for their people, which includes using the lands which were prior to 1965 for other means of other uses apart from the grazing. So that, first of all, shrank the grazing routes and started bringing up conflict, because it's not it's if you just promulgate at your level that this land is now a school or this land is now a housing project. The Fulani the herdsman does not know that. He's going to still pass that place, and when he sees his land being the land that he's going to pass through being encroached, of course there's this natural clash. Why this thing have been here for centuries, because 1965 was documented, but for centuries, they've been passing through these lands and back, back and forth. So this was the genesis of the clash. Then, of course, it started getting more accentuated with now in the past maybe 30 years. But I would say the real crisis was from maybe 2010. In 2014, we're in Benue, where, in fact, I've never seen in my life, as I've been into conflict since 2000. I can say I've seen quite a lot, but I've never seen the kind of destruction in Agatu, in fact in Daudu. There was extreme. The Gwe West, Gwe East. We went round, and it was terrible. And it was funny enough. Immediately after the clash, then the floods came. So we had what we called a complex emergency. One emergency after the other. So they didn't know what they were confronting. They were confronted with displacement. They were confronted with the fear of a reprisal attack, and they were also confronted with the floods. So it really challenged us as an institute, first of all, because we had been working with herding communities. So a lot of the work we do is almost like thankless, but we understand the depth, and I'm sure you've seen like Neem. You've seen the depth of work you've done in reconciliation at the community level. A lot of times you reconcile people and they just say, "God bless you, my son." And at times that's all you need to just hear. Meanwhile, you've spent sleepless nights, you've spent countless days trying to convince one party or the other just to start talking. because a lot of people take dialogue creation for granted. But at times, because of the deep-seated hurt, maybe because of the killings, because of the issues that have come up, things are very difficult to bring them to happen. In fact, when I saw the first time we had a meeting between Magban and Afan on this farmer herder crisis, because I think it's what we call the ZOPA, the Zone of Possible Agreements.
Yes.
That's what it's called. That's the point of entry into a conflict. That's where to open up. Because if you look at the farmer herder conflict, it's basically an economic conflict.
Yes.
Which has been hijacked by ethnic, political, and religious bigots and elevated to the stage where it is now, where some people even accuse some herdsmen of being jihadists. But at the root of it is an economic conflict. I mean, it's seasonal. They just want to give their cattle forage. The farmers also just want to be able to farm and till their land. But I mean, they because of the explosion of the farmers that are giving birth and the climate migration issues for the herders, they now come together at the same time and the same place. So there's bound to be clash. It's how to bring back the problem into the economic problem and bring it into the economic solution. Because I mean, if that's where we see the ZOPA, it's an economic solution. We de-emphasize politics, de-emphasize religious and ethnic sentiments, and bring it back to what it has originally been, an economic problem.
Dr. Ukam, I like where he dropped it off there, identifying the root cause and at the core of this conflict on both parties. And I quite agree with him that it's an economic situation that has taken many faces, as you, if I may put it that way. But on an institutional level now, I know, like you said, we've had many engagements with the All Farmers Association of Nigeria, which is AFAN, and the Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria, which is MAGBAN. We've had different engagements with them, but now from an institutional level, because before, I mean, it's not physically possible to gather all the farmers, to gather all the herders and say, okay, we want to start the mediation process. Like you mentioned, the ZOPA, there has to be an area that would sort of engage with, that will begin the engagement with. So from an institutional level, how has this alliance, I mean, IPCR and Neem, we've done quite a lot. IPCR has done a lot with other civil societies as well. But how has this engagement, this collaboration, how has it contributed to the empowerment of the organizations, that's AFAN and MAGBAN, in facilitating peaceful conflict resolution among farmers and herders?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I must say that the collaboration with Neem has been very helpful over time. In the past couple of months, we've worked together with Neem closely on this issue of farmer herder crisis. It has helped a lot to at least bring these two major key actors together, the parties. It has helped us to, first of all, identify the parties to the conflict. We have been able to identify the dynamics of this conflict and bring the parties together in one table. In that negotiation and dialogue table, we have been able to put them into. They have come to understand that they are partners and they are one. We were able to reconcile the semantic confusion in the issue of the name farmer herder crisis. So they have both come to embrace each other and accepted the fact that they are both farmers. So it is either you are a crop farmer or you are a livestock farmer. So now, as such, bringing them together has also helped us to reunite them and no longer see themselves as enemy, to build that trust needed for sustainable peace. So the collaboration with Neem has been very helpful, because today, when you are talking about Magban and Afan, you see that they are working together. In fact, they even insisted that they should have their offices together and have their association very closely with each other, because both of them belong to the Farmer Association of Nigeria. Yeah. So it will be unheard of, and semantic confusion to separate them. You understand? So now that synergy has made us to bring these two parties together. And before now, that relationship was not like this. It was a very serious relationship of distrust, where a crop farmer, sees the header as enemy. And then each time an header is passing, they have that approach. So as such, even the header also developed that kind of mindset towards the farmer. So, but now that we were able to bring their leaders together and make them understand that we both need each other. You both need each other, at least, if not for any other thing, for the economic and food security of the nation. Because at each time, this conflict, this farmer header crisis, has led to so much food insecurity, economic downtrodden, and also several issues like displacement had occurred as a result of the farmer header crisis. And again, that alone has also helped us to make them understand, because at each time you talk about the resolution of the issue of farmer header crisis, the women are kept aside. So the collaboration with Neem has opened their horizon and make them understand that the women suffered most. If you, as the caregiver, you lose your life as a result of the crisis, the women suffer it the more. So we try to make them understand that there is need to bring in the women, to also sensitize them and see how they can work collaboratively and not see the other person as the enemy. If it is the climate change that is an issue, let us address this climate change. So the Neem Foundation has also enabled them or broadened their knowledge, and also bring in that dialogue and that opportunity for engagement, which has before that time been completely elusive. So now what we are now saying in essence is that we will not stop there. The Neem Foundation and IPCR have done a lot to put them together, but there is need for us to sustain this relationship, because it's one thing to bringing them together to love themselves and see how they can work together. It is another thing to do follow-up and see how we can really broaden this relationship and make it sustainable. Just like my colleague, the deputy director, has stated earlier. He said, we are no longer talking about conflict resolution, because when you think that you have resolved the conflict, tomorrow, so now we have migrated, we have pet up to looking at it as conflict management, because those cases keep coming. And you know, it was due to that collaboration that we were able to understand that even most of the henchmen causing this crisis were alien, were foreign to the immediate community where these issues are happening. So now, as such, they didn't know. The farmers just think that anybody that is header is enemy. But they didn't know that there were some persons who comes from foreign land or who are not part and parcel of the immediate community. So now, it was now coming together to identify the real culprits who have been moving with AK-47. And not seeing everybody. And again, this one, we were able to make them understand that when we even talk about header, it is wrong to dwell it on Fulani all the time, which making even Fulani an endangered tribe. You get the point. So we have a situation whereby most of these cattle are even owned by people from other regions. But again, they are calling it a Fulani business. So that collaboration had enabled us to develop, to identify the root causes of this farmer header crisis in Nigeria, the dynamics of the crisis, and analyze it in such a way that it is now helping us to achieving a very commendable results and outcome on on that very issue.
Yeah, I really agree with you. And so there is an aspect that you spoke about that I really, really liked. Women engagement, dialogue,
Yes.
and also like what Mr. Emeka said on some foreign entities that might come into not necessarily for good of that community, but to cause havoc. And I'm going to give an example because in the course of our engagement in different communities, we've seen that there are some people that come under the guise of herders or under the guise of farmers to cause problem and then run away. Right? And then they put that community in a delicate situation where we identify that these people that came here dress this way, look this way, so they must be this set of people. So anyone we see, we would attack them.
Yes.
You know, and in one of our other dialogue meetings, there was a particular woman who came to the dialogue, and she said that our entire family were wiped out by these same people. And so she had it in her mind. In fact, she was spreading it around that anybody that looks like that or that comes from that, I don't want to mention the anyone that is from that tribe is a terrible person and should be killed, you know, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And then she came to that meeting and she heard a woman who is deemed to be from that tribe telling her, saying during recounting her stories that they came to our own community and they did the same thing. And then this woman said, what, you mean you two are also facing the same thing? You mean it's the same pain I'm going through that you two are also going through? You know, she thought that maybe there's just one set of people that are the bad people, right? And she just generalized like that, not knowing that on both sides of the divide, there are people suffering from certain elements that have spun this whole crisis and, you know, turned it to their own benefit. The reason I'm raising this is because there also needs to be enlightenment on the fact that it's not always about
a particular tribe. Yeah.
It's not even always about farmers or herders. Sometimes there are people who dress under the guise of these people to perpetrate evil, you know, just to whatever agenda that they have, just to spread it. And that's why, like you rightly said, and like you also rightly said, it's really important that we begin to identify who are among us. We are in a community, we know ourselves, and that is where it starts from, right? Knowing who your brother is, knowing who your sister is. So when there's a foreign entity that comes in, you can say, okay, I've not seen this person, who are you? Right? Yeah. And that's why I asked the question from the institutional level. So even, you know, from the leadership of the Alpha Magban, and it trickles down all the way, they're able to tell their members, identify, speak with your community, bond with your community so they know who you are, right? Yeah.
There's a project which is the role of traditional institutions in the management of pastoralist and farmer conflict in West Africa, because we also understand that the degeneration of intergroup relationships between farming and pastoralist communities have manifested in increased physical, sexual, and structural and psychological violence. Sadly, the fusion of violence and criminality into the farmer-herder relationship has been as a result of intractable violent extremism, some terrorism, insurgency, and which creates a conflict environment that enables spread of threats to freedom from fear, want, and human dignity. But you have to look at what is the place of the traditional institutions, the conflict management and sustainable peace building cannot be overstated. Considering their position as custodian of societal customs, values, traditions, and essential link between government and the communities. You see, that link is at that traditional level. And, you know, why I am emphasizing this is that, you know, hitherto, these conflict is part of the man. Even the tongue and the teeth clash. In fact, is it, I've forgotten the particular conflict scholar that said that the true test of friendship is conflict. It's when you and me, no matter how close we are, we quarrel and we make up. That's where you know the true test of friendship, because you could be friends for 10 years, but you quarrel once and you find it very difficult to make up. Then you were never really friends. But it's how you quarrel and you make up. That is the real test of friendship. Even husband and wife. It's how they resolve their differences. They could be lovey-dovey, love themselves from heaven and back, but a small conflict would come and everybody's talking about divorce. No, the real test of the marriage is in conflict. How they resolve those issues that are, biting at each other, creatively, and come back and continue the marriage. So the place of traditional institutions in the conflict management and sustainable peace building cannot be overemphasized. Recently, there was as part of the this project on these institutions, traditional institutions, looking at the role. The Director General and a team of researchers, including myself, we traveled to Ghana, because Ghana is one of the countries that we identified, Ghana, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, in West Africa, as having, not resolved, but managed the farmer-herder relations to a certain extent. But you remember I said managed because it's never resolved. And one of the things that we discovered because we went to the heartland of farmer-herder conflict in Ghana, which is the Ashanti region. It's actually the richest region. That's where you have the gold and you have the food. It's the food belt of Ghana. In fact, if you go there, you know that even our plantains are not big. They have huge plantains. Everything that they plant there is big. In fact, they were telling us that don't put your leg too much into the ground. It might grow another leg from, that to show how fertile their land is. Yeah. And they have herdsmen there and they have farmers there. And of course, there's going to be a clash because the same climate issue that's big, that is wounding us in Nigeria, is also wounding them there. But they've managed it through traditional means. Making sure that in every the structure of the traditional system, you always have a herdsman as part of the council, to make sure that at every point in time, if anything happens, somebody from the community that they can come. There's been an infringement. Somebody entered somebody's farm and there was a clash. And they now look at it dispassionately and see what could be done and with a timely manner. Even though it's not been perfect, that's why they had what we call the Operation Cowleg. Operation Cowleg was initiated by the government because they were fed up with the clashes and they were following. That cow leg is just following the footsteps of the cow to see where it goes. And once they signify that it goes into a farm, they shoot it because they felt that there was a lot of encroachment, but it didn't work. And that was the truth. So you see, the kinetic method of using power and force is not working there and is not working here.
It's not sustainable. And
even though we also discovered from our own research that the type of Fulani cows they have there is slightly different from the ones that we have here in Nigeria. Here, where they're much bigger and they're more voracious in Nigeria, but also the conversion rate is also different. Their cows are smaller, but eat smaller food compared to the size. In Nigeria, they're not that big, but they eat much more food. Their conversion rate is not that good. That's why you see that the cows, the Fulani white in Nigeria, milk production is not that good. So they were actually advocating for a lot of crossbreeding and better scientific methods of
raising
improved grass and all that, which we in Nigeria here we're adopting. But one of the issues that one of the key findings is also that the Fulanis in Ghana actually felt, first of all, Ghanaian before feeling Fulanis. And that's one of the problems in Nigeria. As an Igbo man, I feel Igbo first before I feel Nigerian. Yeah. You feel Yoruba before you feel Nigerian. And that's also with the Fulani man. He feels like a Fulani man first before feeling like a Nigerian. So our sense of self in this country is not as strong as the one that they feel in Ghana. So they think of what happens to the country, what happens to the people, what happens to the community before they act or react. So there's a sense of nationhood.
Yes,
we don't have. We need to bring that back. Where everybody will first of all feel like a Nigerian before feeling like anybody else, and that's what it is. So and that has helped them to mitigate the problem. Now they have almost they've taken the Fulani community. We had meetings with the Fulani community in the Ashanti region, in the Kofi-Ridua region, in different regions, because it was quite a wide project. We can share the report with you.
Yes, please.
It was very, very interesting, and it opened our eyes to a lot. Fortunately, because I see there's a lot of competition instead of collaboration with Ghana. There's a lot they have learned from us, but we find it difficult to learn from them, and they know it. And that's why there's this pullback that you see at times. It's not that they don't like Nigerians, it's that they feel that Nigerians, they've learned so much from Nigeria, and Nigeria has a lot to learn from them, and we just maybe look down on them a bit, So instead of learning from them, and that's why we went straight to Ghana. We also went to Niger for this same project, and in Niger, it was the same thing. The herdsmen there, felt they were Nigerian, and felt that the encroachment of their lands was because they were Fulanis, not because that there was an economic problem. So you see, politicians and ethnic bigots have tried to elevate this problem beyond what it is. I keep on emphasizing this is an economic problem, and the solution will be found in the economics and promotion of dialogue, promotion of platforms like this. This is it. This is what IPCR and Neem have done, is just to provide the platform for trust to be built, because a lot has been broken. When I first spoke with the Ardo, it was, you see him with the marks and all that, there's a lot of sentiments that come up, because if you listen to the news long enough in Nigeria, there's no way you won't develop some, sentiments here and there. But when you hear honest talk, then you know the power of dialogue. You know the power of relationship. And that's why, the farmer herder conference we had, we didn't talk about clashes. We talked about farmer herder relationships, because they actually do have a relationship. Like doctor said, it's not about always bringing up issues around fighting. They had, they sell their cow dung as fertilizer. The farmer buys the meat, buys the kunu, buys the fura. Yes. From the herdsmen. They had a lot to gain from each other. In fact, it's meant to be a symbiotic relationship, not competitive as it is now.
Something happened recently. We heard over the news recently that there was an invasion of herders. So, however, it was foiled, and we got to understand that it took the herders in that immediate locality to identify that these people were terrorists and were foreign. So they combined efforts with other communities as well as vigilante to suppress these invaders who had come to cause havoc in the name of being herders. So when I heard that news, something broke my mind that actually the Neem IPCR collaboration is really working out, because you see that situation whereby they are no longer seeing them as herder, but they try to identify which herder is this. And that was what we are trying to make them understand. Don't just see an herder from afar and say, this is an enemy. You understand? So because you will see even an angel clothed in a header, and you pass the angel by. So as such, we had broadened their mindset and bring their consciousness to the fact that it can be an header. It may be a header, but this person is not an enemy. Then this person might be an enemy in the like being a wolf in sheep clothing.
Yes.
So now you see, and that collaboration has also helped them. That dialogue has also helped them come together to fight the enemy, which is what we are looking at. Just like my Didi had said, the best thing for us to do at this level is for us to understand and that we owe our loyalty first to Nigeria. You see a situation whereby maybe a Fulani man, for instance, consider a Fulani man from Niger as his own brother more than the Fulani man, more than the Igbo man in Nigeria. Or maybe if there is another tribe, maybe there is a Yoruba-speaking foreigners from Benin. You consider that person as more of your brother, more than the Hausa man here in Nigeria. That is not the point. And that's why, like what is workable in Ghana and other African countries who have been able to curtail this and manage this issue, we should imbibe it. We should take that into
best practices.
I like this where this conversation is headed, especially in terms of sustainability of the program. From both of you now, you've mentioned about 5 key things that I'm just going to reiterate. Joint effort between the farmer herder groups to identify foreigners and be able to resolve matters in a way that does not necessarily engage with maybe force, use of force, escalation. The second one is the place of traditional leaders and that hierarchy, so that within every community, every small group, there are people who are responsible to the people that are around them. 3, the sense of self and patriotism, which is really, really key. Because if you don't see yourself as a Nigerian, you don't care what happens, to the land where you're on. 4 is learning new ways. Learning, evolving, because times are evolving. And we can't continue to do the old thing and expect new results. And then 5, the power of dialogue. And I think that is really, really crucial, because until we're able to sit down and talk about these issues, and this is where, look at the situation of that woman, for instance, right? Through just one session of dialogue, we've been able to change our entire perspective. And now she sees it as not me versus my brothers or me versus my sisters. She sees it as us against the bad people. Yes, and that is, it gives room for more collaboration and more community building. Are there other methods for sustaining this partnership between farmers and herders?
I would put them all under the envelope of conflict transformation. Let's see how because we need to transform the actors, the herdsmen, the farmers, the state, and the society. We have to go into what we call structural transformation. How does your agricultural policies respond to these conflicts? You have the what do you call this National Livestock Transformation Plan.
Oh,
yes. That's transformation. But also you have to have the legal transformation. So it's all part of what we call John Paul Lederach, the father of transformation, comes the comprehensive transformation of peace. Because,
sir, can I also add very quickly? Is there a place of psychological transformation as well?
Definitely.
Because we notice that even in the communities where we implement, for certain people, force is their natural, their first instinct to conflict resolution and not dialogue. And maybe through psychological transformation, we can introduce dialogue first. And most times, dialogue is even a more sustainable way than force. Please go ahead, sir.
This is very important, because it still came back to one of the interventions we had with, we were called upon by the Bengonet, Benue Non-Governmental Association. They were contracted by, I think it was UNHCR then, to come and see how they could bring peace between IDPs and host communities. And because first of all, we have to do our research. And from our research, we found out that they didn't have a real problem. It's just that they didn't identify what was the issue, because they complained about the IDPs being unruly, the IDPs being taking drugs, the IDPs never sleeping, the IDPs, prostituting and stealing. And, a lot of the things that they complained about, when we went there, we identified them as psychosocial issues. They had trauma. They lacked trauma awareness. And so when we brought them together, both the leadership of the IDPs and the leadership of the host communities, when they didn't speak for more than 10 minutes, they started hugging each other and crying because they now realized that they were one, and they hadn't identified. In fact, some people that had almost full-blown PTSD were not criminals, but people that had seen their wives and their children slaughtered. And even the Fulani men that they thought were their enemies, that were in their communities forever, reminded them about some relationship that they had. And so see, I say all the time, what we do is that platform. Is that platform for dialogue. Once you bring it up, you now identify what it is. Because once you identify what it is, in this instance, that the problem wasn't that the hosts or the IDPs were unruly. It's just that there were psychosocial issues bordering on trauma, some even PTSD altogether. Some it was just counseling that took care of these problems. So, I mean...
Yeah, just like... I remembered an incident that happened in one of our engagements between the Neem Foundation and IPCRO and the MACBAN people. You discover that the MACBAN, the chairman of the MACBAN, like for instance in Benue State, could say that he was born in Benue. His own grandfather was born in Benue. So, and you see, over time, they are part and parcel of Benue, but they are still considered Fulani people.
Aliens.
You get the point. They still consider them aliens. So now, with what we were able to do to make them see the problem and not the persons, we have given an opportunity for that, the possibility of having a community-based solution to come out to resolving this issue. Just like you identify, talking about the psychological issues, we need to address the attitudinal and behavioral practices that is militating against sustainable dialogue with them, and which is what our engagement has so far started yielding results. Because a situation whereby you have this attitude of seeing this person as enemy, nothing good can come from that person. So
even when the person has not done you anything, you just have it is programmed in your mind that once you see someone like this is your enemy.
I'm telling you. And sometimes it's some of the distorted history that is being passed generationally to others. So your father told you that Fulani people are this kind of people, or Igbo people are this. You grow with that mentality, that attitude, hating the Igbos, hating the Fulani man, and seeing the Fulani man as an enemy any point in time. This is what is really plummeting the problem, and that's what we are looking at. So the level we are now is that as a policy think tank of the government, we are now tilting towards developing a policy analysis. So the aspect of advocating for the sustainable peace. You cannot bring a sustainable peace in an issue of farmer elders crisis when you have not provided the alternative. So we, as a policy think tank, we are now looking to what is the alternative. How can we resolve this problem? Even though we cannot resolve it, how can we manage it so that this issue can be minimal? How can we advise the government of the day towards having a sustainable project or intervention in this regard? We talk about, like in Cross River State, the governor was talking about was talking about a particular grass, growing a particular grass that will enrich or that will enrich the ranching idea. We're not looking at ranching. You understand? When we talk about ranching, how can we do it in such a way that we will not have our headers moving around, destroying other people's crops? How can we put them in one place? If putting them in one place, what are those alternatives we can put in place so that the elder can comfortably, because again, you can't achieve this when you don't identify the behavioral or attitudinal problem. The elder believes that it is his nature to be walking from one place to another. How can you address this issue so that the elder will understand that even ranching, you don't need to even suffer yourself.
Yes.
You can ranch and also get the result and the money and even make more profit.
And even is it
nomadics?
Yes. Nomadism. And I'm not sure it's even sustainable anymore because there are more highways coming up, more buildings coming up. You know, we've heard of instances where the train, cattle go by the train tracks and they are killed, even on the highways, you know, causing accidents. So it's not even safe anymore. It's not as it used to be back then when we had those few roads and they can just tour through the forest and there's no problem. A lot of them are coming to town. I'm very sure we've seen pictures of cows, even in Secretariat here, you know, and it's just unheard of. Like, what are you looking for here? You know, but it's not sustainable. As we round off, I mean, this engagement, this discussion is really interesting, but for the sake of time, as we round off, we know the election period here. I think is basically what everyone is talking about. I have my PVC. I hope you that are listening, you have your PVC and you're coming out to vote. It is really, really important because this is part of the whole thing that we are talking about. As we go towards the election period, what are some of the measures taken to ensure peace between the farmer and herders? As you rightly said, there are some people who are capitalizing on the fragility of this ongoing conflict management phase. And they are taking advantage of it, both politically, people who have the wherewithal to cause trouble, basically. They are taking advantage of this and using it, they are spinning it off in different ways.
Thank you very much. In fact, elections, that's this, especially us in the Democracy and Development Studies Directorate of the Institute, we've been, in fact, almost 24 hours on call because we've had several engagements with several partners. In fact, we just finished a conference with a local partner, an NGO, on drug and substance abuse, the nexus with the 2023 elections, and which we called for more vigilance, we called for awareness, we called for sensitization, because one of the things that IPCR has done in the past, especially for voters, for IDPs, because we are very particular about vulnerable populations. For IDPs, we did voter education in Adamawa and Borno states. Then, because we identified the issue of moving from the temporary voters card to the permanent voters card. Now we've moved from that setup to another one altogether, where you have the BVAS, electronic voting, and we've also started engaging through voter education, and we have in particular what we call the Election Conflict Management Project, which is a multi-sectoral, multi-faceted project which engages at the community, at the state, at the federal level for voter awareness and conflict mitigation when it comes to elections. We right now we're in partnership with Rotary. We're going to train about 100 Rotarians on peaceful elections. And also, we are in partnership with INEC. It would interest you to know that one of the issues that we brought up with INEC, and although INEC is also very responsive right now, is the issue of gender in elections and the issue of PWDs in elections, persons with disability. I think it was last week that we had a conference where we we updated a checklist, INEC checklist on PWDs, and because the new electoral law gives opportunity for people that are suffering with albinism to have magnifying glasses at every at the polling booths that they have registered. Then, if you have, if you're challenged, you stay in a wheelchair, and you are registered in a polling booth, that polling booth cannot be on an elevated surface; it must be on a flat surface. Then you have opportunity for braille ballots for voters that have been identified to be visually impaired to be able to vote their candidate, or because it's not everybody that has the opportunity to have gone to a braille school, to have a guide, one guide to point to you for you to thumbprint exactly where you want. Not that somebody will tell you this is PDP, meanwhile it's APC, or it is LP, and meanwhile it is ACN. So these opportunities are now there for INEC. Then also priority voting, where lactating women and pregnant women are given priority to vote. And even elderly. We observe elections actually. We about 100 this time around, about 300 observers from IPCR in collaboration with WANEP, Mercy Corps, and what we call the SEWIMS. There's early warning monitors. We have early warning monitors all over the country.
Great.
Yes, we're going to train them, and they're going to observe pre-election situation and advise us, and post-election, the election and post-election. All this will be fed into what we call the situation room. The situation room is a room where we have analysts that would look at the data coming in and know exactly what to do with that data, whether it's to scale it up to the security forces or to the various, because we have engagements with the police, with the military, with the INEC, with the various states, governors, states functionaries. So it's a synergy to try and see how we can mitigate and control election violence. That's why the project is called Election Conflict Violence Management. And it's been very tedious, but so far it's been very rewarding.
Great.
And we hope that with all this and all the awareness and sensitization that we're carrying out, both on the TV, radio, and in person, and of course online, it would mitigate these election violence to the barest minimum.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
your last word.
Thank you. In addendum to what my DD has said, the Institute has done much in recent times because this democratic transition really is a thing of worry. Each time we have in transition periods like this, there are so much agitation, there are so much conflict issues, and our hands are always on the deck. Just as he said, in IPCR, we want to ensure that there is a peaceful, democratic transition to the next government. There are a lot of predictions, there are a lot of things that is happening. So, but our concern is to see how we can put the stakeholders together to achieving this peace. And that's why in so many opportunities we have, like we had opportunity we engaged with one non-governmental organization the other day, the Center for Peace Advocacy and Sustainable Development, when we had opportunity to tell the youths and they brought the youths together. We had opportunity to see how we can help the youth with the right attitude, with the right strategies and mechanism to also help us handle some issues of conflict in their own immediate constituency or community, so that it will not snowball to another point. And we are working with security agencies, just like my DD has stated, to ensuring how, because particularly as it affects this farmer header crisis. So we are working with security agencies to give them information, useful information, as we get from the field. Our people are everywhere monitoring the process. It's just like he has stated, the Institute is concerned about the pre-election period, during the election, and also the post-election.
Yes.
All these are crisis periods, so we are putting our hands in deck, all hands in deck to see how we can manage this. But however, we also need the support of the media at this point, because the media, as part of their corporate social responsibility, must be able to rule out the useful information and sensitization media campaign as it affects to discourage electoral violence, especially among the farmer header, because we will have a situation whereby the header in a particular community will want to vote this person, but because it is their interest, you want to see how you can scuttle it or bring problem. Because like when you see a Fulani header, for instance, he's not going to vote in his Fulani village. The immediate village he finds himself, that's where maybe his polling unit is, and that's when he will cast his vote. So if we don't address some of these attitudinal issues, you see a Fulani man wanting to cast his vote, some other people will rise up against, and those are the issues we try to clear. And we want media to support what the IPCR is doing, as well as Neem Foundation, to support us to see how they can amplify our voices, especially in period like this. We really need it to go round that we need peaceful, democratic transition. And when we have this, because conflict, we need all hands, and it's a societal problem. It's not just about IPCR alone. We need all actors to come in together to addressing it. So we cannot address it alone, and that's why we are calling on stakeholders, other non-governmental organizations, to also help us see how they can sensitize and build peace, at least for a possible, clearing way for a possible democratic transition come 2023.
We need all hands on deck. I really like that part. Mr. Emeka Barr is the Deputy Director, Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, and Dr. Barrister Ukam Ngwu, who is the Research Fellow at Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for coming on the show
very much
today.
For having us.
We really appreciate you for your time and your wealth of knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be speaking on the issue of farmer headers relationship and the role of government and civil society in resolving conflict or managing conflict. And that's been it for Neem Capsule today. Thank you so much, our listeners, for staying tuned to this moment. I also don't thank my colleague Benga, who is in the studio supporting us in the background silently. My name remains Adedoyin Betiku, Senior Communications Manager here at Neem Foundation, and we hope that till the next time, we don't know whether it will be after the elections or before. Please get your voters, or during, who knows, get your voters card and come out to vote peacefully. Support peace and peace-building initiatives in your community, and be peace ambassadors wherever you are. You don't need to be a government or government staff. You don't need to work with an NGO to uphold peace. Look at your brothers and sisters around you, that sense of nationalism. You're a Nigerian first, before your tribe or before your religion or whatever. What binds all of us together is our motherland, Nigeria. Thank you so much for listening in, and thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye for now.
Yeah.